Hello and welcome back to my vlog. Tea Leaves by Francis S. Drake. We're up to about part 7, I believe. The Sons of Liberty having failed, and the Tories asserting that the meeting at Liberty Tree was irregular, petitioners for a town meeting declared that the people were alarmed at a report that the tea had been shipped to America, and feared that the tribute would be exacted and that the liberties for which they had so long contended would be lost to them and their posterity. A meeting was therefore called by the selectmen for the next day at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. That night a threatening letter was placed under the door of Mr. Faneuil, one of the consignees, warning them that a much longer delay in complying would not fail to bring upon them the just reward of their avarice and insolence. The town meeting, held on the 5th of November, was fully attended and was presided over by John Hancock. After due consideration, it adopted the resolves of the Philadelphians of October 18, declaring that freemen have an inherent right to dispose of their property, that the tea tax was a mode of levying contributions on them without their consent, that its purpose tended to render assemblies useless and to introduce arbitrary government, that a steady opposition to this ministerial plan was a duty which every free man owed to his country, to himself, and to his posterity, that the East India Company's importation was an open attempt to enforce this plan, and that whoever countenanced the unloading, vending, or receiving the tea was an enemy to his country. A committee consisting of the moderator, Henderson Inches, Benjamin Austin, and the selectmen of the town were chosen to wait on the consignees and request them, from a regard to their own characters and the peace and good of the town and province, immediately to resign their appointment. At this meeting, a Tory handbill called the Tradesmen's Protest against the proceedings of the merchants on the subject of tea importation was introduced. After the reading, without comment, the tradesmen present were desired to collect themselves at the south side of the hall, where the question was put whether they acknowledged the Tradesmen's Protest, and the whole, amounting to at least 400, voted in the negative. The paper, its printer, and those who circulated it were denounced as base, false, and scandalous. This gave a finishing blow to the protest, of which nothing more was heard. After voting that it was the just expectation of the town that no one of its merchants should, under any pretext whatever, import any tea liable to duty, the meeting adjourned until 3 o'clock. At that hour there was again a full assembly. The committee reported that they had communicated the resolves of the town to the Messrs. Clark and Mr. Faneuil, who informed them that they must consult Thomas and Elisha Hutchinson, the other consignees who were at Milton, and could not give an answer until the following Monday. Samuel Adams, Joseph Orham, and Molyneux were then desired to acquaint Messrs. Clark and Faneuil that the town expected an immediate answer from them. This was very soon received and pronounced unsatisfactory by a unanimous vote. John Hancock, John Pitts, Samuel Adams, Samuel Abbott, Joseph Warren, William Powell, and Nathaniel Appleton were chosen a committee to wait on the Hutchinsons and request an immediate resignation, and the meeting adjourned until the next day. On Saturday, Faneuil Hall was again crowded. The committee reported that it could not find Elisha Hutchinson, either at Milton or Boston. Thomas Hutchinson, Jr. informed them in a letter that when he and his brother were appointed factors and the tea arrived, they would be sufficiently informed to answer the request of the inhabitants. This reply stirred up some of the hot blood in the assembly, and a cry of to arms, was received with applause and clapping of hands. Discretion, as usual, prevailed, and the meeting voted that the replies were daringly affrontive to the town, and then dissolved. The governor tried to collect evidence of the inflammatory speeches that had been made, but could find no person willing to give it. A quiet week followed. The tea ships were nearing the harbor, and the journals were filled with political essays, generally strong, well put, and elevating in tone. Locke, in the Boston Gazette, said, "It will be considered by Americans whether the dernier ressort and only asylum for their liberties is not an American commonwealth." It was evident to the leaders on both sides that a crisis was at hand. Hutchinson foresaw that this would prove a more difficult affair than any which had preceded it, and in his letters admits that the mass of the people acted in the conviction that their rights were invaded. Believing the supremacy of Parliament was in issue, he determined, though standing almost alone and in opposition to the advice of his political friends, to make no concession. In a letter written at this period to Lord Dartmouth, Secretary for the Colonies, he describes with minuteness the state of political affairs. He says, "At present, the spirits of the people in the town of Boston are in a great ferment. Everything that has been in my power without the council I have done and continue to do for the preservation of the peace and good order of the town. If I had the aid which I think the council might give, my endeavors would be more effective. They profess to disapprove of the tumultuous, violent proceedings of the people, but they wish to see the professed end of the people in such proceedings attained in the regular way. And instead of joining with me in proper measures to discourage in opposition to the landing of the teas expected, one and another of the gentlemen of the greatest influence intimate that the best thing that can be done to quiet the people would be the refusal of the gentlemen to whom the teas are consigned to execute the trust. And they declare they would do it if it was their case, and would advise all their connections to do it. Nor will they ever countenance a measure which shall tend to carry into execution an act of Parliament which lays taxes upon the colonies for the purpose of a revenue. The same principle prevails with by far the greater part of the merchants who, though in general they declare against mobs and violence, yet they as generally wish the tea may not be imported. The persons to whom the teas are consigned declare that whilst they can be protected from violence to their persons, they will not give way to the unreasonable demands which have been made of them. I wish the vessels bound to New York may arrive before those designed to this province. Governor Tryon I know to be well disposed to his duty, and the people there are less disposed to any violent proceedings, as I have reason to think, than they are here, and an example of peace and good order there may have its influence here." We'll find out if it did. I know it didn't. More tomorrow. Make it a great day, and bye for now.